Okej, zobaczmy, o czym to będzie.
All right, let's dive into something a little different today, language learning. You guys sent in a page from Learn Real Polish Language, and it's this course called 100 Daily Polish Stories. I gotta say, I'm intrigued. It's not the usual textbook and flashcard thing, is it?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
It seems to be all about immersion through stories. You mentioned wanting to know if it's worth the time, so we'll break down the structure, the unique aspects, and of course, what people are actually saying about it.
Yeah, those real life experiences are gold. But before we get to all that, what's the philosophy behind it all? What's the creator's take on language learning?
Well, the creator, Piker, he really seems to be
Piker.
challenging that traditional method, drilling and repeating.
Yeah.
It's more about making the language a part of your everyday life. There's even this quote on the website, listen more, you'll understand more, speak more, you'll speak better. It's really simple.
Okay, I like that. And it does make it sound a lot less intimidating than memorizing grammar rules. How does that actually translate to the course itself?
So the core is those 100 stories, designed to immerse you in the language, and they come with questions and answers to test your understanding. Plus, over 20 hours of MP3 recordings of those stories, transcripts, and glossaries. The whole package.
So it's about immersing yourself in the language through these stories, both orally and visually. Instead of grammar rules first, you experience it more naturally, kind of like how we learn our first language.
Exactly. Mimicking that natural acquisition, which is often way more effective. And speaking of mimicking real life, they have live webinars too.
Right, every 2 weeks with Piotr himself. Seems like he's really invested. That personal
Piotr.
touch can make a big difference. What's the reasoning behind that? Why this structure, this emphasis on stories?
I think it comes down to his belief that stories are just a natural, engaging way to learn. I mean, we learn our native language that way, right?
Yeah.
Constant exposure, listening to stories, trying to understand the world. It's not about verb conjugations from day one.
It's a good point. We learn by experiencing, by interacting, not just dissecting. There's that quote, tell me a fact, I'll forget. Tell me a story, I'll remember it forever.
Exactly. And this whole course seems designed around that. He even claims you can see progress in weeks in your listening and speaking with daily practice.
A bold claim, and definitely worth exploring further. Before we get into the testimonials, though, one more thing about the structure.
Oh, you mean the purchase options? You can buy the whole 100 daily Polish stories outright, or there's a monthly subscription to try it out. Different learning styles, different commitments.
Yeah, it's great they offer that. Some people dive in head first, others like to test the waters. What about additional resources? Community support. It sounds like they go beyond the usual online course.
They do mention additional resources and community support on the website. They don't go into a ton of detail though, but it's probably some kind of forum, a community, maybe even a chance to practice Polish with each other.
Makes sense, especially for those learning on their own. So, to recap, this course moves away from traditional language learning, immersing you through these 100 engaging stories.
Plus all those materials, live webinars with the creator, flexible purchase options, definitely shaping up to be a unique approach.
It is, but even more intriguing is this philosophy, mimicking how we naturally learn language. It's bigger than just Polish. It's about how our brains are wired. But the big question is, does it actually work?
And that's where those testimonials come in. We're about to find out how this story-based approach plays out in real life. Things are about to get interesting. All right, back to our deep dive. I'm ready to see what these testimonials have to say. There's just something about hearing from actual people that makes it feel real, you know?
Oh, totally. It's like looking into the lives of people who've already done it, not just theory, but real results. Where do we even begin? Anything catching your eye?
Well, there's Tamar's experience. Went from zero Polish, and after just a few weeks using the course, she was getting compliments on her language skills. It's not just the speed, it's that she says it felt effortless, even fun.
That's so interesting because it goes against that idea that learning a language has to be a struggle, right? Back to Piotr's idea of mimicking how we naturally learn through immersion, tapping into something we already have.
I know. And it makes you wonder, maybe those positive feelings make a difference. We stick with things we enjoy, and consistency is key for languages.
Right. Find something you love to do, and you'll never work a day in your life. Maybe the secret is finding a method that makes you excited to learn every day.
I think you're onto something. Oh, and Marcelo's story too. After 2 months, he could understand complex stuff like TV shows and documentaries, stuff he struggled with before. He credits it to the daily listening practice from the course.
That is encouraging, especially for people who find language learning daunting. Even a little bit each day, focused listening can get you results.
It all comes back to consistency and immersion. Listening to those stories every day, he basically trained his ear to understand Polish. No grammar rules, no vocabulary lists.
It's like training your ear to recognize musical patterns. More you listen, the better you understand the melody, the rhythm.
Perfect analogy. It's not about separate tasks, it's a holistic experience.
Yeah.
Immersing yourself in the sounds, the rhythms, the stories.
Speaking of stories, one testimonial mentioned using them for conversation practice with a native speaker. Bob, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bob and his Polish friend ditched their textbook and used Piotr's stories as a starting point for their conversations. Shows how engaging the material is.
Absolutely. It's real-world application, not just passively listening or reading, but using it to connect with people, share experiences.
That's the magic of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Communication, understanding, connecting with people from different cultures.
Couldn't agree more. And while we're talking about connection, what about the community aspect of this course? Seems like there's a shared goal among the learners.
Definitely noticed that too. I think it's partly because Piotr is so involved. He's not just some distant creator, he's a guide, a mentor, genuinely invested in his students' success.
That kind of engagement can make all the difference, especially with something as challenging as language learning. It's like having someone who understands your struggles, celebrates your wins.
And that community becomes a support system. You can share tips, ask questions, find motivation when things get tough.
And it's more than just support, it's shared learning. Imagine the insights you could gain from people all over the world, all discovering Polish together.
It is a beautiful thought, isn't it? A global community connected by language and culture. It's bigger than just learning a skill, it's expanding your horizons, connecting, enriching your life.
It makes you realize that language learning isn't about memorizing, it's about opening doors to new experiences, new perspectives, embracing the richness of human communication.
Well said. And it brings us to an interesting point. This is about Polish, but these principles could change how we learn anything.
That's been in my mind this whole time. Stories, immersion, community. Could that be the key to learning anything more effectively?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And that's exactly what we'll be diving into when we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
Back again for the deep dive. I gotta say, after looking at this Polish language course, I'm seeing language learning in a whole new way.
It's been a journey, right? From the structure to the philosophy, and now that big question.
The one about whether this whole story-based immersive thing could work for other skills too, not just languages, it's been bugging me.
For good
Maybe.
reason. Think
Co
about it.
myślicie?
Engaging stories, repetition, practical use instead of memorizing.
Powtórki.
Those aren't just for languages, those are learning fundamentals.
And the community, the personalization. People adapted the course, created their own paths, connected with others.
Mądre.
Exactly. Imagine learning to code this way. No more dry textbooks. You'd have interactive stories that teach you as you build a website.
Whoa. Like
Whoa.
those choose your own adventure books, but for coding. So engaging, you
I
wouldn't
don't
even
know.
realize you're learning. And then online communities to share projects, help each other out.
Learning becomes an adventure, not a solo struggle. And it could go beyond coding. Learning an instrument, cooking, even complex science.
Making learning engaging, relevant, and fun. Traditional education misses that. Too much theory, abstract stuff. We don't learn that way.
We learn by doing, by experimenting, by connecting. This method taps into how we're wired.
So here's our final thought for you today. As you learn, whatever it is, think about these principles. Find resources that tell a story, immerse yourself, connect with others.
Step outside the traditional classroom. Embrace something different. You'll be amazed how much more you learn when you're fully engaged.
And who knows, you might even discover something you never knew you loved.
That's the magic of learning. Always something new to explore, a new story waiting.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those brains working.
Co myślicie? Ciekawe, co? Zabawne dość. Zapraszam. 100 historyjek po polsku.